In this video, we will be installing a new ACT Performance street clutch and flywheel. While this video provides the basics on how to switch out a clutch, it is in no way intended to replace the factory service manual. Our vehicle has been modified with an air intake system which is different than the factory unit. Removal of the air intake and filter system may differ for you. This video features the installation of our street kit. However, kits are available in different configurations based on the torque being produced at the crankshaft and your driving style. The installation procedure will be the same except for the disc being used. Our kit lineup for this application are as follows: DC2 HDSS Spring-Centered Street Kit, DC2 HDR4 4-pad solid centered race kit, DC2 HDG4 4-pad spring-centered race kit, DC2 HDR6 6-pad solid centered race kit, DC2 HDG6 6-pad spring-centered race kit. At the front of the vehicle, turn the two clips and remove the air inlet. Disconnect and remove the battery. Remove the battery tray. Loosen the clamp at the rear for the air intake tube. Remove the air intake system. Unbolt the shifter cable bracket from the transmission. Unfasten the shifter cables. Unclip the hydraulic line from the shifter cable bracket and then move the shifter cables and bracket out of the way. Unclip and remove the hydraulic line from the bleeder valve. Cap the hydraulic line to prevent the fluid from draining out of the reservoir. We used a rubber vacuum cap for this task. Take off the front wheel and tire assemblies. Remove the hub nuts. Unbolt the plug at the bottom right of the transmission and allow the fluid to drain. Reinstall the plug and torque it to 26 foot-pounds. Remove the pinch bolt at the left knuckle and pull out the ball joint from the housing. Remove the axle assembly from the hub. And then remove it from the transmission and out from under the vehicle. Remove the pinch bolt at the right knuckle and pull out the ball joint from the housing. Remove the right axle assembly from the hub. Then remove the bracket at the catalytic converter. Next, unbolt the bracket which mounts the axle to the engine block. Now pull the axle out of the transmission and then out from under the vehicle. Take out the top bolts for the rear transmission mount. Unbolt and remove the top transmission mount. Remove the upper bell housing and starter bolts. Disconnect the electrical connector at the backup lamp switch. Loosen the rear transmission mount through bolt. Remove the lower bell housing bolts at the bottom and toward the front of the transmission, leaving 2 bolts at the rear. Place a jack under the engine. Unbolt the rear transmission mount from the subframe. Now remove the rear transmission mount through bolt. Unbolt and remove the front transmission mount through bolt. Unfasten and remove the cross member located under the transmission. Remove the studs from the subframe for the rear transmission mount. Unbolt the rear transmission mount bracket from the transmission. Remove the rear transmission mount and bracket from under the vehicle. Unfasten and remove the lower intercooler piping. Undo and remove the charge air cooler pipe and unplug the electrical connections for the sensors. Unbolt and remove the 2 bell housing bolts at the rear of the transmission. Now separate the transmission from the engine and remove it from under the vehicle. With the transmission now removed, disengage the retaining clip and detach the bleeder valve. Then unbolt and remove the slave cylinder. Install the new slave cylinder and tighten the bolts to 6 foot-pounds. Reinstall the bleeder valve, securing it in place with the retaining clip. Lightly coat the input shaft splines with the purple Ceram lube included with the clutch kit. Wipe off any excess lube to prevent contamination of the clutch disc. Now unbolt and remove the old pressure plate, disc, and flywheel. Mount the flywheel using new OE flywheel attachment bolts. Torque the bolts to 70 foot-pounds in a star pattern. Make sure to clean the friction surface area with some sort of non-petroleum based cleaner. Set the disc in position and use the alignment tool to hold it in place. Before installing the pressure plate, make sure to clean the friction surface area with some sort of non-petroleum based cleaner. Now set the pressure plate in position and install the bolts. Remove the alignment tool. Tighten the bolts in a star pattern and torque them to 24 foot-pounds. Lift the transmission back into place and install the lower bell housing bolts. Torque the bolts to 37 foot-pounds. Place the rear transmission mount and rear transmission mount bracket into position. Install the bolts attaching the rear transmission mount bracket to the transmission and tighten them to 66 foot-pounds. Fit the studs back into the subframe for the rear transmission mount and torque them to 48 foot-pounds. Install the nuts securing the rear transmission mount to the subframe and torque them to 38 foot-pounds. Install the rear transmission mount through bolt and tighten to 70 foot-pounds. Attach the connections for the sensors on the charge air cooler pipe and then place the charge air cooler pipe into position, making sure to tighten the clamp. Set the lower intercooler piping back into place and tighten the clamps. Position the cross member back under the transmission and tighten the hardware to 50 foot-pounds. Reinstall the front transmission mount through bolt and torque it to 50 foot-pounds. You can now remove the jack from under the engine. Set the passenger side axle assembly back into place and engage it into the transmission. Install the bolts for the bracket attaching the axle to the engine block and tighten them to 55 foot-pounds. Now reinstall the bracket at the catalytic converter and tighten the bolts and nuts to 55 foot-pounds. Install the axle back into the hub assembly, then the ball joint back into the housing. Tighten the pinch bolt and nut to 70 foot-pounds. Install the hub nut and torque it to 180 foot-pounds. Position the driver's side axle assembly back into place and engage it into the transmission. Install the axle back into the hub assembly, then the ball joint back into the housing. Tighten the pinch bolt and nut to 70 foot-pounds. Install the hub nut and torque it to 180 foot-pounds. At this point, remove the transmission fill plug and add the appropriate amount of specified fluid to the transmission. Once complete, reinstall the transmission fill plug. Install the upper bell housing and starter bolts and torque them to 37 foot-pounds. Remove the cap and reconnect the hydraulic line back into the bleeder valve, making sure to install the retaining clip. Fill the reservoir to the max level and bleed the hydraulic system. Once it has been bled, top the reservoir back up to the max level. Install the top bolts for the rear transmission mount and tighten to 66 foot-pounds. Install the top transmission mount and torque the bolts to 50 foot-pounds. Mount the shifter cable bracket back into position. Reconnect the shifter cables and clip the hydraulic line back onto the bracket. Reinstall the air intake and tighten the clamp at the rear of the engine. Install the battery tray and then the battery. Reconnect the terminals to the battery. Fit the air inlet back into position and turn the two clips to fasten it in place. Finally, reinstall the front wheel and tire assemblies and torque the lug nuts to 95 foot-pounds. For more information on our products or the parts featured in this video, please visit our website in the description below. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.